This week's tip is about tubular bind-offs, mainly because I am knitting a toe-up sock that I'm doing a tubular bind-off on, and since I have it here, this is a good time. Now, to prepare for doing a tubular bind-off, you need to work 2 rows where works best with ribbing, and you work 2 rows where you are slipping one stitch and working the next stitch, and then on the other row you alternate that. Now, because this is knitting around, on the first row I slipped the purl stitches and knit the knit stitches, and on the next row I have to slip the knit stitches and work the purl stitches. If I were working this flat and I had an even number of stitches, then it would be the same. It would be the reverse of that. You'd be working it the same. But whatever pattern you're working with, you just want to make sure that you do at least 2 rows and you alternate the stitches. And I've left a few stitches. I'm at the very end of this, where I'm about ready to do my tubular bind off, and I've left a few stitches. So as I said, because I'm working this in the round, and on the previous round I knit the knit stitches and slip the purl stitches, on this row I'm slipping the knit stitch and I'm working the purl stitch. Slip, knit, or purl rather, slip, purl, and slip. Now I'm at the point where I can do the tubular bind off. And I'm using double pointed needles because I guess I'm old fashioned and I just like them. But of course you could do this with 2 circulars, 1 circular, however you like to do it. Or if you're working flat, well, that's completely different. Use your whatever needles you want. Now, the way that I do this, I learned from the Big Book of Knitting by Katarina Boos, Boos, I'm not sure how she says her name, but this method works best for me. And to start it, you have a knit stitch on one needle, and the first stitch you have over here is a purl stitch. And you begin by putting your tapestry needle, and by the way, you cut off a piece of yarn for this, and because I once cut it too short, I always have mine ridiculously long, which I apologize about. But if you wanted to sit and figure out exactly how much yarn you needed, I guess you could, but it's easier for me to just cut off more than I need. I insert my needle knitwise into that first purl stitch, and then I insert my needle going from side to side into that knit stitch that's on my needle, and I cross over that purl stitch and I go into the knit stitch on the other side of that purl stitch. I'm going through 2 stitches at once, and I guess you could say that's purl-wise because I'm going down. And I pull my yarn, and you can pull this fairly tight. What makes this bind off elastic are those slip stitch rows. So you can pull this tight, don't worry about it being too loose. So I've pulled my yarn through those 2 knit stitches, and now I insert it purl-wise through that purl stitch that I skipped. Pull it tight, and then I drop those 2 stitches from the needle. And basically I just do that over and over again. Knitwise into the first purl I see, knit purlwise into the knit stitch, and that could be a bit tricky seeing. If you're having trouble seeing that stitch, you might want to go through and put a safety pin or something on it so that you notice it as you go through the 2 knit stitches purlwise. Pull it tight, and then through my purl stitch. And I drop. And you can see why this is called tubular. It's giving you a nice little rounded edge. Knitwise through the first purl. And this yarn is kind of splitty, so I want to make sure I'm not splitting it. And again, I could have cut this much shorter, but you know, like I say, once burned. Okay, then through the 2 knit stitches, and this one's off the needle. It's the one I just dropped, the one on the needle. and then purl. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and I will show you what it looks like when it is all done. Well, I've done the stitches from one needle, and you can see that it gives a lovely little rounded edge at the top. And the reason why you do this on the top of socks is it's very stretchy. A typical bind off is not this stretchy. It's not a firm base for a bind off, so you would do this where you want it to be decorative and on an edge where you need a lot of stretch. I frequently use this on the necklines of children's sweaters because it gives me a bit more of a stretch. So that's this week's tip.